This is a breakdown and a behind the scenes look at how I made a movie about why the journey is everything. And honestly, even though the final video is only 8.5 minutes long, making it was a journey in and of itself. Because while I posted the video on May 15, 2026, I started planning it at 4:30 a.m. on May 3, 2025. So here's a look at how I pulled this project off and some of the many challenges along the way. If you haven't seen it yet, link in the description. Let's get into it. Firstly, to plan this project, I wrote out the script word for word and drew a storyboard shot for shot. While the script did go through some iterations prior to recording the final voiceover, the shot list was almost exactly the final cut. I did this much planning for a few reasons. For starters, the plane ride I took to move from Edmonton to Montreal, where the last 3 shots of the video were taken, was on May 23, 2025. This meant I had to plan and shoot everything I needed in Edmonton prior to that. However, I also had several client video projects to shoot and work on, so I didn't have all the time before I left to dedicate to this project. But my family was gone, so I could shoot literally any time I wasn't doing client stuff. As a result, a lot of shots were done in the middle of the night since I'm a bit of a night owl. It's a bit late right now, but we're making movies. Another reason why I planned most of it was because I knew there would be a decent number of visual effects, or VFX shots, which would each potentially require filming multiple elements in a specific way, so knowing exactly what I needed to capture was important. In post-production, I put together a very rough cut with the best takes of each of the shots, no VFX yet. This allowed me to get a better idea of the timing. Now it was time to start the sound, which for this project included a voiceover, soundtrack, and sound design later. I recorded a rough voiceover with no processing yet, to get a better sense of timing with the visuals. Next, I started arranging the soundtrack. For some of my movies, I make the music from scratch in a digital audio workstation called FL Studio. But for this one, since it was on the longer side and needed a lot of different types of sounds, I primarily stuck to combining and arranging different samples. These samples are royalty-free and can be minimalistic or more fleshed out, depending on how creative you're feeling. Most of the ones I used were from a website called Cymatics, which have a plethora of both free and paid sounds. I put together melody loops, drum loops, and one-shots, making sure to match tempo, key, and automate different parameters to add variations. A bunch of different unique sections were made to match different moods of the movie. Once I had rendered the initial version of the soundtrack, I brought it back into the video in DaVinci Resolve and started to fine-tune the timing of the visuals more, making sure emotional parts of the story aligned with certain parts of the soundtrack, and cuts and motions within the video flowed nicely with the beats and rhythm of the song. At this point, I had a better idea of timing and length of each shot, so I was able to move on to VFX. The visual effects for this project were where I got a bit ambitious, because there were some shots that I liked the idea of and helped tell the story, but I wasn't sure how I was going to pull them off while I was storyboarding. So while I did want to try them, I knew they would require a lot of work. For most of my videos that only have 2 or 3 complex VFX shots, I can give each shot the time it needs, trying and experimenting until I get something that looks good. However, for this one I was like, yeah, this shot will not be easy, but I'm sure I'll figure something out. Which, saying that on its own for a few shots is a fun challenge. However, I did that several times while storyboarding, and suddenly I was more than a dozen involved VFX shots deep. One of these more complex shots was the empty white void. While it would have been easy to throw myself on a green screen and put a white background behind me, green screens tend to spill color and reflect green onto whatever is on them, which wouldn't look very good if everything around me was white. Also, if I was in a completely white environment, I would be receiving light from all directions. So to minimize green spill and emulate the surrounding light, I wanted to shoot on a white screen. I'm trying to recreate a void, just a plain white void shot down here. So got the camera there, got 2 shower curtains there for the white, got a bunch of lights there, but this is actually being projected from behind. So I might have taken the projector down, put it right there, so it's projecting on the floor. It's super stretched out, but onto there. And then if I mirror, so it's hooked up to Apple TV, so then if I mirror my phone to the Apple TV back there and just put a plain white background on my phone, that'll show through the projector and essentially just turn it into a giant light. So I can use this as a big soft backlight, and let's see how it goes. Although, one of the big reasons why blue or green screens are used is because that color is farthest from a human skin tone, which makes it easier to separate and remove the color from the video. However, I happen to also be white, so quickly removing white wouldn't really work. I tried intentionally overexposing the white to the point where it was almost clipping, so I could theoretically just throw a feathered mask in a very rough shape around myself, not rotoscoping, but just enough to allow it to blend seamlessly into a white background. After experimenting, I found that I could use a combination of this masking and a luminance-based key, which removed certain pixels based on their brightness or darkness, to isolate myself from the background. I put on a dark outfit for this shot to improve my separation from the background, which was the primary reason why I wore what I did for most of the video. For the final shot though, I mostly just used the AI-based magic mask to rotoscope myself. This was done in Fusion Studio, the standalone version of the Fusion page in DaVinci Resolve. I did most of the compositing in the standalone version, then rendered out EXR sequences to be put into the timeline in DaVinci. While this was a promising first half of the equation, I still needed the tunnel leading into the void. Since I shot the inside of the tunnel shots practically in an outdoor water drain, we're out here in a tunnel in the river valley. Got the river back there, just stuff there, camera there. Kind of a cool heavenly-ish shot, like block that light. That's not the light. Kind of cool there. Anyways, yeah, very cool location. We're doing this practically. But now that I had reached it, the light was actually a void. There's a dock there. I made sure to hop into my bathing suit and wade through the river to take a few hundred photographs of the outside of the tunnel. This allowed me to use photogrammetry software called Polycam, which analyzed the images and created a 3D model out of it. I was seriously blown away by how well this worked. I brought this into Blender and made some very rough modifications to it to make a complete circle and extend it to be real long. With these two primary elements, I can now create a 3D scene in Fusion and add some camera movement. One thing I could have done better was taking more on-set measurements, like the camera's focal length, height off the ground, distance from the subject, and the angle. This would have made matching the virtual camera more accurate. This was the general method for the void shots. Learning is more about the journey of problem solving, rather than a destination or some massive complex equation that solves any problem. Sketchy setup is outside of the tunnel, sort of a establishing shot from outside into the void. So we got the tunnel there, I'll be coming out of it. Got the camera there, shooting at 50 mil, but the legs are kind of half in the water. Well, the one is. So I wanted to make sure it didn't slip, so I took the camera strap and put it around the bike. So hopefully that's a bit of redundancy, safety-wise, but let's go make a movie. With nothing in it. No more school or work set up yet, just a future to figure out. I realized engineering is... As for the space shots, I was hoping to hop in with the Artemis 2 crew and shoot them practically. But unfortunately that was $1 or $2 out of my budget for this movie. For these shots, while I used a similar 2D and 3D method, I took a different approach while shooting the 2D person plates. Since I wanted to be dark and backlit, like how I might look in space, I went the green screen route instead of the bright background. I captured a few different takes and did my best to seamlessly hide the transitions between them on the computer. As for the 3D parts, the stars were frozen particle emitters on 3D planes, with some astrophotography of mine thrown in there for good measure. The Earth was some quick and dirty work in Blender. I used some Earth textures from NASA, which was also where I got the 3D model of the International Space Station at the start of the video. A void is an empty space. And while outer space is not completely empty because it has intergalactic stuff, it is a wonderful way to understand why the journey is everything. But to give you some context, we need to go back to high school, Sebastian.
Which was somehow almost a decade ago.
Another involved VFX shot was the classroom shot. I got some friends to sit in an empty classroom in a few different places around the room. Then with some more rotoscoping and set extending, made it look bigger and fuller. And yes, I very much realized that every person is there like 16 times, moving the same, wearing the same clothes. Don't even worry about it. The professor said 1/3 of us won't make it through. That confirmed it was not going to be an easy journey. For the calendar transitions, I shot every month of an actual calendar. Alright, calendar stuff. Then painted out some details, then cut out a hole on a day and put an animated photo of me in. And brought each one into 3D to bend and animate them. Nothing too crazy, but really tedious. The technical-ish motion graphics and animations were a unique challenge, but not for the reason you might think. Most of these were 2D, y is a function of x and time equations. But the coordinate systems were not the same for the graphs that I had filmed and the ones I was making in Fusion. Also, trying to publish the path of the equation so another object could follow it was weirdly complicated. But after some digging, a fantastic French person on Reddit sent me in the direction of a video tutorial, which made it a lot easier. I also learned more Lua code, so I could write mathematical expressions and relationships between points for polygon masks. I definitely took a good amount of time figuring these out, but as explored in the main video, I love using math to create visuals. The first conversation shot was a pretty quick split screen of me looking at the script with a bit of a clean plate in the middle to fill the gaps. Pro tip for VFX shots of any complexity, always shoot a clean plate. That is, the frame with nothing in it. No people, no mics, just similar lighting conditions if possible. Even if you're pretty sure you won't need it, better to have it. And try not to just step out of the frame for half a second. It's best to get at least a few seconds of empty frame, so if there's any significant noise or grain or small moving elements in the footage, you capture that movement. I played myself and forgot to record multiple seconds, so you can notice in the intro shot that the grain freezes, and I tried to add grain over top, but it looks kind of funny, and not funny haha. The rest of the conversation was over-the-shoulder style shots of the person talking or reacting, and the foreground person was on a green screen. The shot of me on the green screen was out of focus because I wanted to retain that natural looking depth of field when compositing it over top of the other shot. However, that blur made keying a bit tricky. Luckily, right around the time I was trying to key these, a YouTube channel called Corridor Digital released a tool called Corridor Key, a machine learning based keying tool. So I gave that a whirl and it worked wonderfully. Huge thanks to the team at Corridor for making such a sensational free tool for the community. I have the Amaran 150C on 35% there. It's going off a white bounce, and then got some edge light there, got the mic there. Motivated by the overcast outside right now. This is with zero light, like just the rim light over there. So that's just outside rim and then rim light. So then that's with the key light. For the degree on a pedestal shot, I tried to do most of it practically. However, I didn't put enough thought into what the background was going to be when shooting. So while I think it's a cool slider shot, it looks very foreground over random computer-generated background-ish, because that's exactly what it is. I should have dialed in the lighting better on set. So a little update from editing Sebastian here. Apparently I did fix that pedestal shot and make it look less foreground over background-y, but I just forgot to re-render it, so shucks. Years, I'd put this degree on a pedestal. It was the light at the end of the tunnel. But now that I had reached it, the light was actually a void. The final fireworks shot was fun to put together. I shot myself walking onto the J in daylight, then started a time-lapse immediately after to get the full sunset. Then got myself doing the exact same action when it was dark. The walking shots were nothing special, but the time-lapse took me 4 tries to get. I had to rush to the location straight after work, and the first 3 times the sun had either gone behind the buildings before I got there, or there were too many people to get a clean initial shot prior to the time-lapse. Even though the sun hasn't technically set yet, it's behind the buildings, so I'm not sure this shot will work anymore. So attempt number 3 failed. We'll be back again. It's 7:30 p.m. The sun just went behind the buildings in Old Port. Our time lapse is underway. Hopefully, attempt number 4 goes to plan. I got a video, it's not perfect, but we'll fix it in post, right? And it was neat to chill in such a touristy spot for 2.5 hours straight with a camera, because a lot of people asked me to take their photo on their phones. So I got to meet some cool pals. It's now 9:15 p.m. I've been standing here for 2.5 hours shooting a time lapse, but I think it worked out, and there's gonna be a lot of post-production to be done. The fireworks in the sky were real fireworks, just not there at that time. In Montreal, there was a summer fireworks competition, which I got the chance to check out several times and film the explosions in the sky. I used the same luma keyer as I did for the void shots, except this time instead of getting rid of the bright pixels, I got rid of the dark sky pixels to isolate the fireworks. Then I masked out the buildings to make sure the fireworks would blow up behind them. That was the general approach I took to creating this shot. Also, since I knew I would be standing in front of the fireworks in the sky in the final shot, I knew I would have to isolate myself from the background. It wasn't going to be very practical to set up a green screen behind me in this location, and both the sky and myself were quite dark, so a luma key wasn't going to work out. So I made sure to bring some small tube lights and put them behind me to create a bit of a rim light to act as an outline. This was helpful in post-production, because I was able to use DaVinci Resolve's Magic Mask node to rotoscope myself and isolate me from the background. Additionally, since the sides of the letters were reflective, I shifted and flipped part of the fireworks in the sky to make reflected versions in the letters. To top it all off, I put a whole lot of glow in the shot to sort of glue the lighting together a bit better. That sounds up my alley. And while it should be a beautiful destination, it's really just the next part of the journey. That's because the journey is everything. Now that I had a good foundation for the VFX shots, I could render them out as EXR sequences and bring them into the edit with the voiceover and the soundtrack. This was when I could really start dialing in timing between the voiceover, radio dialogue, and the soundtrack. I also had to make some changes to the voiceover script to help with timing and story conciseness. Once the script was locked in, I recorded a better voiceover. You know, the classic blanket over your head with a pop filter, while trying to sound as cinematic as a commercial for the new Ford F-150 with rugged 4-wheel drive and a 100-liter V23. After getting a clean recording, I did some denoising and post-production like equalization, compression, de-essing, and saturation to make it sound a bit more polished. It's time for some sound effects. Adding all 743 gigabytes of whooshes from my computer, plus some impacts, risers, mechanical sounds, and random Foley that I've recorded of a creaky dishwasher in Kauai 4 years ago for some reason. Can't forget an 808 for good measure. Now that we were sounding good, it was time to make it look sexy, with some nice color grading. Honestly, I didn't do anything too crazy here. Mostly just adjusted the contrast and exposure, converted from log to Rec 709 and Cineon Film Log, added a vignette, and a Kodak 2383 LUT. And there you have it, a final movie. Time to hit render and let the laptop turn into a jet engine. While I'm waiting for it to render, I like to try something that I haven't done in a while. Touching grass. It would be sensational if you subscribed.